Okay, so I'm Master Orlando Giovanni from Ansteorran. I've kind of organized this panel as as sort of an Ansteorran focused order of defense panel. And you might ask, why not just make it society wide? Well, there have been society panels already, and there are some unique cultural differences that Ansteorran faces that may not be relevant to other kingdoms, and so I wanted to make this a forum to sort of address those cultural differences. We have a slightly different awards path for some people. We are the cradle of the white scarf, so to speak. And we're one of the kingdoms that has not made the decision to close its white scarf order, and it's just a very important part of our culture. So that's something that's going to be, I think, an important topic of discussion for the panel. But also, with all of those cultural differences, I think a lot of people have questions about what is the future of the MOD in a kingdom where the white scarf reigned supreme in the rapier community for so long. So that's why we're focusing this in that way. Not because we want to we think that we're elitist or we want to segregate ourselves from the rest of the society, but people in the kingdom do have legitimate questions that are Ansteorran specific, and this will give them that forum to do that. So once again, for those that weren't here, tonight's panel will be recorded. Please try to keep yourself muted. I'm going to try and keep everybody muted as much as I can. We've got a list of pre-submitted questions. And then once we go through the list, then Mistress Rhiannon will take at her discretion other questions. So I'm going to stop rambling now and hand off to Mistress Rhiannon.
Hey, if you want to add any questions, put them in the chat and I'll try to pick them up later, or I may already have them on the list. And that's for anybody. The first question I have for the mods is, what does it feel like to be part of the newest peerage order in the SCA? And Robin, do you want to start?
Okay, that makes sense because I'm the one here who's been part of it since the start. First of all, it is not the newest peerage, it's the newest peerage order. There's only one peerage that all peers belong to. Sorry, you asked a herald to start, you get a heraldic pedantry. One of the biggest things particularly when it started, was that we all had much more individual responsibility to represent the group. It's still true to some extent because there are like about 20 to 22 white collars, and significantly more than that in every other peerage. I remember one event where I was the only collar there, and Laurel was being elevated. I had no choice, I had to speak. So the biggest difference for me is just that with fewer people, we all have a larger chunk of the responsibility.
Anyone else want to add?
I'll throw in to a slight counterpoint: with great responsibility comes great power. To throw a reverse Spider-Man. The fact is that we are a small order right now, worldwide and within Ansteorran, and as a result, one can have or I won't say undue influence, but one has to be aware of the influence one has in the community. We're still at the point where we're figuring out what the collar means, what we're doing, how we serve the kingdom, how we serve the community. So it's it's a tricky balancing act sometimes to be aware of that, you know, we can have undue influence for good or bad. So we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, and I would add that it's exciting to be at the forefront of this. It's also the kind of thing that makes you worry that you're going to set bad precedences also. And so I think sometimes there is a bit of paralysis that sets in for fear of setting bad precedences or doing the wrong thing.
I will also throw in that one of the issues we run into with there being as few of us as there are, if a knight screws up, there's 250 other knights. You know, if Laurel screws up, there's what, 190 or something like that, and this is just on Ansteorran. You know, Pels, you know, whatever. There's 22 of us. If you know, it's real easy for one or two of us to do something stupid, and you know, we've all seen, you know, knights get painted, but you know, one knight screws up and everybody paints the entire order. It's a lot easier to do it when there's, you know, 20 of us than it is when there's 150 or 200. So it makes us have to be a little bit more aware that way as well.
Along those lines, it's also that we don't have any of the great striding dinosaurs that have been a laurel for 20 years and active for 20 years as a laurel. So for the grand majority of us, all of us carry a similar weight, which is not the same in older established orders.
So that leads me down to one of the other questions, actually. That works really well, Kelly. Thank you. So how's the Master of Defense different from a knighthood or the other peerages as far as how it works and how it is working?
This is Modius. Simply put, from my perspective, that a member of the Order of Defense is a rapier knight, is the top of the pyramid for rapier, leader in the rapier community, as a knight is leader of the Sherlock community.
I think the goal is for it to not be different. Kind of like I think what Modius is trying to say. It's like it should be pretty close to being a knight, just with a rapier instead.
I think that there are conceptual and actual technical differences. I from a technical perspective, there is the fact that the knight represents the preeminent leader in the martial combat field. And when I say martial combat, I mean military combat or the combat of war, whereas the MOD or the Order of Defense really represents the pinnacle or the leader within the civil combat field. You know, and I think this isn't written anywhere necessarily, but that is the difference in fencing and normal martial combat is the fencing is this concept of defense and of civil combat, combatants fighting in their street clothes, so to speak, or you know, the city guard, that sort of thing. as opposed to, armies massing on the field with large shields and siege weapons and those sorts of things. So I mean, I think there's a major difference, technical difference from there. But that also represents a lot of there's a lot of conceptual differences otherwise too, that the concept of the courtier, the concept that you are also a member of that courtier class. So that's, those are some of the big differences I see. But the primary one to me is the difference in martial versus civil combat.
So something I would add, because the initial question was kind of what's the, where is it compared to the knight, for instance? And I think this speaks to Ansteorra's culture with the white scarf for so many years, is we've always, as long as I was a Don, stressed that three-legged stool of soldier, scholar, courtier, all three. And the fact is, in the rapier community, in the SCA, there's a lot more scholarship still than what you'll find necessarily at the martial arts level of chivalric combat. So we do have a lot more practitioners who are looking at the period techniques, the period manuals, trying to recreate those styles. And I think that does change the character a bit of what we're doing.
Okay, so from the chat, I've got a couple of questions to add to this. Is the military versus civil focus accepted as the main difference in knighthood and the MOD across the body of Ansteorra's Master of Defense?
Absolutely not. The Order of Defense couldn't agree on what the hole in the privy is for.
Okay, that's pretty blunt.
Yeah, but that also applies to the knights, to the laurels, to the pells, to the centurions, to any three random people you want to grab at an event.
Very true, Avery. So, and then what about the fencing manuals that focus specifically on military combat?
I don't know what the question means.
Mhm.
So
Um,
I guess they're asking, since there was a focus on separating the chivalric combat and the rapier, and saying it was more war for chivalric and defense and city combat with the rapier. What about the manuals that focus on military combat that are rapier focused?
Remember
The
this Orlando's premise. Each of us have different ideas that may or may not be similar. For example, for myself, I don't see the chivalric side being melee based. I see it being tournament based. And the other field of tourney is the grand melee. So from my perspective, I don't see war versus civil, especially since we're now doing longsword and two-handed sword and live steel or close braided blades with rapier and with shiv. We're seeing a melding of the two lines.
I think it comes down to what field are you doing it on. If you're doing it on a field with us with a steel weapon, that would be what we focus on. If you're doing it in armor with a rattan weapon, that's not what we're focusing on. That's the difference there.
The crucial fact is this: a third to a half of the Order of Defense have never read a manual of any sort. We are a martial order. We are not inherently a research order. It's primarily rapier. That is because of the history of the SCA. And I don't see it likely to not be primarily rapier anytime in the next 15 or 20 years. After that, who knows? But it includes cut and thrust. We do not have an Ansteorra somebody who is primarily cut and thrust rather than interested in both cut and thrust and rapier. That doesn't mean we can't, but it will be an unusual person, just like somebody who studies Lithuanian barbed wire weaving will be an unusual laurel. But what manual you look at, you're not required to look at a manual. What weapons you use, if you're in a steel weapons thing, you are a legitimate candidate. I do not see any possibility that in the near future will make anyone who is not a rapier fighter as well. But I have no problem with the idea of someone who is primarily focused with our steel weapons on military manuals, because the manuals don't come up in our discussions that often.
However,
I also want to throw one thing in there real quick. The question posted in the chat by Renee about how does this reflect the including of CNT and fully armored combat? Understand, in the SCA, there is rapier, which includes rapier, which is the Deltons and Schlagers and all of that, primarily thrust. And there is cut and thrust, which fall under the rapier guidelines. Then there is fully armored combat, which is not part of rapier. It is not part of the armored side. It is its own creature. They set it up specifically that it did not fall under either of the already established groups. So, if you're by fully armored combat, what I'm taking it is the experiment that was done with it in Atlantia that has now been put into the society rules, but that's a different thing. We do armor as worn and things like that within CNT, but that's not fully armored combat, different animal. So as far as I'm concerned, as a member of the MOD, which is for rapier combat, the fully armored combat as posted, as made legal by the SCA, does not apply to us.
John has something to say, I think.
Yeah. I also just want to point out that cut and thrust is simply a rule set, and it is a rule set that's very broad. You can literally use any type of sword you want, and as long as it passes the flex test, right, and it won't fall apart. So, like, many people use rapier, fight with a rapier in the rule set of cut and thrust. In fact, it's a very good way to fight cut and thrust, actually. So, when you're discussing rapier versus CNT, those are rule sets, but they're the weapon you use in those rule sets are also kind of separate discussion. And it specifically says in Corpora that you can be made a mod for either, right? So, like, it's kind of out of our hands in a sense. Like, we have to consider people who do CNT as well. Sorry, just a clarification a little bit.
And I have a whole set of questions relating to CNT later down.
So
So I had answered that question from her.
if I can address that real quick though, Rhiannon,
Yes.
I just wanted to point out though that Robin is right. We don't, within the SCA, you should not try to fit what we do into a specific period box. We do the SCA, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism, which is a historical-ish form of martial arts. And so what we look for as an order is we look for how well do you do SCA martial arts, first of all, and then the historical aspect is simply a plus in some people's opinion. I'd also point out too that edge-oriented combat or cut and thrust was very much done in a civil combat context. And if you want to talk manuals, most of the manuals that I can show you are demonstrating civil combat in a judicial sense, unarmored civil combat with long swords, side swords, all kinds of other edge-oriented weapon systems. So, but to circle back around, as Robin said though, I wouldn't expect that we always fit everything into one of those boxes. Like, what about this manual or this manual? We're not trying necessarily to replicate any particular manual or style or any historical aspect. It is an SCA martial art that we're defining here. That's why we have our own rule sets and our own manuals.
This is not to say that we don't read manuals and go giggly about various aspects of them, because we're geeks. That's why we're here. We like this stuff.
Okay. Anyone else before we go on? Right. What was it like to become a white scarf, or to become a white scarf as the terminal peer or terminal award on your award path, and then to have the peerage become available? Because all of you were white scarves first, and then you became members of the MOD.
For me, it
I'd love to jump in there real quick. I'll be honest, when it was first being discussed and first announced that it was going to happen, it really felt like at the time, and I was very vocal about this, unfortunately, though it felt like a demotion is what it felt like to me and several White Scarves that I talked to. At one point you're the top of the food chain. You're an admiral, and then all of a sudden you're a lieutenant. It was difficult, but I think that the kingdom has started getting past that a little bit, I think.
I know for me, it was a shock. I never thought I'd ever see this happen. So for me, it was just a big shock. And then, unfortunately for me, at the time, I was also in the middle of a break, and so it was. I mean, I didn't disagree with Pete's feelings at the time. I saw where he was coming from. It was why I was more for everybody getting promoted as opposed to pick and choose, was primarily because of the frustration and hurt that permeated through a lot of the White Scarves.
I see it as something completely different. And I know that this disagrees with a lot of people, but hear me out. The job of the White Scarf, at least in the early days, involved trying to convince other people that fencing should be allowed. White Scarves had duties that no peerage order, including the collar, could ever have. No knight ever told his squires to be polite to people or attend combat might be banned forever. No laurel ever had to defend why we have arts and sciences in the STA. No pelican ever attended an event where service was banned. And no collar will ever do these things either. But the White Scarves did. And because the White Scarves did, the collars will never have to do that. And that is why I don't see it as the same kind of order. The White Scarves had responsibilities and duties and a task in front of them far beyond what any peerage could ever have. And having the peerage now, frankly, feels to me like my first, greatest, and longest lasting SCA duty, SCA task has finally been accomplished. Because it's a peerage now. It's something that's accepted everywhere. And that is so different from what it was when I became a White Scarf 39 years ago. And it's a culmination of things that I couldn't have believed when I became a White Scarf. And that's why I never thought of it as the same as a peerage. No peerage has ever had it as hard as the White Scarves did. The early White Scarves.
John and then Avery.
I think when you get a terminal award, can be there's the enjoyment of having it, and then there's sort of the letdown that there's not something else to work for. That's not really true, but it can feel that way, right? So the benefit of the mod being created, it was like 2 years after I got White Scarf, 1.5 years, meant that there was now another something else to work for, right? It wasn't like that wasn't, oh, because for a long time you got the white scarf and that was the last rapier award you would ever get, right? And now there was another thing. And I think while you could look at that as a negative, I think there was some positivity, at least for me a little bit, about having another goal to work for. So I think it was complicated at the time, but I think that was a side benefit that I think people don't talk about, but I think it was a benefit.
John, I think that took a lot of courage to say. I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the two reasons, from my perspective, why it was the natural thing to get behind and see about driving through society. Number one, creating that level up, that achievement, able to go for something else and knock some of the rust off the old dinosaurs and get them out and fighting again and moving up the chain. Fortunately, I didn't see that happen. And the second one is to put the white scarf where it was, but make the Order of Defense a premier equal to the knighthood and equal to the laurels, equal to the pelicans, which was the second duty that I saw as a rapier fighter.
It was weird for me in that I don't have any other way to say this. I worked for the white scarf. The white scarf was a goal. When I first picked up a rapier in Ansteorran and I saw these people running around with these white things on their arms, my reaction was it wasn't necessarily I wanted to be one of them. It was I wanted them to think I should be one of them. And there's a difference there. The MOD happened. I happened to be doing the things, or at least it was decided that I was doing the things that qualified me for an MOD. But I never worked for an MOD. The MOD was, the timing was right. I worked for a white scarf. Now, since I've become a member of the Order of Defense, I feel like okay, now you have another job, and we've all tried to make sure we do that. But the getting to there, I wanted to be a member of the Order of the White Scarf. Becoming a member of the Order of Defense happened to make my job easier because I was Kingdom Rapier Marshal at the time. And unfortunately, I think the MOD is a good thing, and from an inter-kingdom standpoint, I can absolutely agree that it was a needed thing. But it was not something that I strove for. It was something that happened.
Okay. Gwyneth, you've got your hand up.
Can people hear me?
You're a little faint.
I've got my mic as high as it'll go.
I'll turn up my speakers.
Okay, the white scarf was something special. It was created by a small group of people with a vision, struggling against the establishment to make it happen. I think I'm the oldest white scarf here after Robin. So some of the younger ones don't remember, but I was raised in the era of if everything doesn't go perfectly, it can all go away. Anyway, so the white scarf has history and vision and soul. The MOD was created by a committee. It was created by a bureaucracy and created by a committee. So when it first happened, it didn't have any meaning. It was a generic period. What is it? The period for rapier. Okay. We've not had a lot of time to create the history. And I don't know if we ever will. It's a less romantic period of our SCA history. I don't think it can ever become what the white scarf was. So we have to figure out what it can become and how to make it happen.
Any other thoughts before we go on? Iago. Did you raise your hand, Iago?
I did. My perspective has changed rather dramatically in the last 3.5 years. Moving from a kingdom where the white scarf meant something to a kingdom where the white scarf still means something, but it's gone. The idea that the main idea that I'm seeing is that even by the time I was made a white scarf, there was still that outside edge of people that still weren't too sure about us, and we generally only ran across them in if we went to foreign events or went to inter-kingdom events. But it's still something that could be taken away, just like it has been in many kingdoms, whether the fencers wanted it or not. The mod is something that can't be taken away now.
Well said.
So that actually leads into another question that's about the difference between the two, the white scarf and MOD. Why can't the members of the Order of Defense fulfill the role of the Queen's man in the same way that the white scarves have for so many years? Or can they? Etienne.
My view is they can, but it turns into culture. In Ansteorran, the white scarf is the queen, or the white scarves are the queen's men. That's not the case throughout all of the white scarf orders in the known world. It's certainly not the case in the rapier communities in other parts of the known world. And from my perspective, it would be very difficult if a member of the Order of Defense came into this kingdom from a kingdom where they aren't the queen's men, and we said, well, here you have to be. Here you are. And also, I just don't see that role. Peerage serves the crown. It doesn't serve one or the other. And I think that my service to the society, my service to the crown has to be to the crown. Now, granted, when I swear my fealty, I'm looking at Her Majesty, but she wears the crown last time I looked.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so this question comes up pretty frequently, right? In Ansteorran, and I'll tell you this from a guy that came from a kingdom at a time when we had the other kingdom I came from had reigns where the crown would forbid rapier throughout their reign. Simply because of their dislike of the culture or whatever reason. And so being a person that came from a place like that and then finding myself in Ansteorran one day, the white scarf is just, I can't imagine it going away ever, for my own personal reasons. I do think that over time, the white scarf will evolve in Ansteorran. I don't think it will go away, but I think it will continue to evolve, just in the same way that it is no longer a grant level award. It is actually a non-armigerous award. And for those unfamiliar with the way that Ansteorran conceives awards, there are some non-armigerous awards in Ansteorran that hold a greater prestige than any patent level award does. So the problem and the blessing that we have in the white scarf is that it is so prestigious, and people I don't think imagine it going away or imagine it evolving, but I do see it evolving over time. And you know, a common thing that you hear a lot of people say, and this, by the way, is not an answer because I don't have the answer yet, but I'll put this out there. The thing you hear a lot of people say is why would we want to, in Ansteorran, elevate somebody to a peerage like the Order of Defense who doesn't live up to the standards of a Queen's man? And it's a tough one to respond to. very tough question to respond to. And so this is what we are struggling with this a great deal. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. I see a whole bunch of hands, and I'm going to go in order that I saw them go up. So John, Avery, Robin, Kelly, Brendan. And
Pete.
Modis, if you have your hand up, I'm not sure.
Pete has his up too.
And Pete.
I think that the mod can be the Queen's Man. And I guess Modius is the only knight here. He correct me, but aren't the knights the King's Man, right? Like you were saying, the crown. But I think there's no issue with one leaning towards one way or the other. I think it would be a little bit of a shift from what we're doing now, but I think we are having that discussion. But I see no reason why we couldn't be. And I think you could make an argument that we even are right now already, because we are all still, I mean, because of the culture of Ansteorran, it's hard not to be a Queen's Man is just a rapier fighter, regardless of what awards you have. And then I think the thing that people will bring up is if you make being a Queen's Man a requirement to be a mod, then it means that there's certain people who will never be able to be mods. But I have a hard time believing that we left out, like, are there not white scarves? Like the white scarf was around for 40 years, and there was before the mod existed. It was the highest. It was the award, right? Was every single one of those members a Queen's Man in the same degree? Like I think we probably let some people in who weren't to the same degree, right? I mean, I assume Robin and Gwyneth could speak to that better than I could, but anyway, that's what I have to say about that.
Who's next? Sorry, I lost track. Okay. I think it is possible. I think one of the problems that you run into is in the White Scarf Circle in Ansteorran, we all go into the circle, and most of the time, the king and the queen are both there, but it is absolutely the queen's meeting. We had a queen who was a first-time queen, and it was very shortly after the MOD had been created. We had a White Scarf meeting that was followed by an MOD meeting, and the first half of the White Scarf meeting was a little contentious, and certain people were kind of being, well, rude. And we had a little bit of a break. And during that break, I remember Gwyneth walking up to the queen at the time and going, "This is your meeting." And she went, "Oh, really?" And they're like, "Yeah, it is." And when we started up, she took over again. And the people who were being rude were suddenly not being rude anymore because the queen realized, oh, wait, this is the one place where I can do this. I have been in MOD meetings since then where theoretically we are all rapier fighters, we are all white scarves. But now it's a peerage meeting, and the queen suddenly takes a back seat. And I have had kings take over that meeting because now it quote unquote, now it's real and it matters. And so doing what we've done in the past as far as being queen's men, you know, the queen makes white scarves, and you see the connection that exists between whoever gave you your white scarf and the person receiving the white scarf, you know, and that can be whoever, you know, whether it's, my relationship with Connell, or Pug's relationship with Michelle, or Kelly's relationship with Evergardus, whatever, there is a bond there. I don't know if that bond is there between the MOD and the queen, who, you know, at least certainly not with all of us, and the crown who gave that to us. The queens always, once they step down, they become roses. They always have their white scarves. I don't know if they ever consider having their MODs. And we could go that direction, but that is part of what we would have to overcome.
Robin?
A lot of people want to talk. I'll make this brief. Yes, of course, members of the Order of Defense can be the Queen's Man. I am, so all the others who are on this call right now. But there are two brute facts. One, Ansteorran does not own the Order of Defense. We can't decide what the Order of Defense is. We can have some of our own kingdom traditions for it, but we can't move too far away from what a peerage order is, because we don't own it. Two, and this is, in my mind, the big thing. We've taken away from the White Scarf being the biggest order. We've taken away from the White Scarf having the highest precedence. We've taken away from the White Scarf being the ultimate leaders of the rapier community. The Queen's Men is the one thing we don't have to take away from the White Scarf, and the White Scarf means far too much to me to take it away. The
Here,
White
here.
Scarf built it. We didn't build peerage. That existed before us. We didn't build being on top. That was here before us. But we built the Queen's Men, and we're not letting go.
Well
And
said.
please understand that was this talking, not the collar.
Helen?
Thank you.
Well, Robin, it's always hard to follow Robin. But earlier he talked about the issues that the White Scarf had, that the rapier community had. There are reasons for the bond between the rapier community, the White Scarfs, and the Queen. Yes, Tyvar started the White Scarf, embraced the cult of Gloriana. The other fencers at the time also thought that was a cool-ass thing and went with it. That's part of it. But the other part is that the queens of Ansteorran have time and time again over those years protected the rapier community. They embraced, took care of, and kept kings that didn't like the rapier community from saying, no, we won't have rapier in Ansteorran in my reign. So there's a two-way street here, and Queens cried at us when we talked about closing the order in White Scarf circles. White Scarfs do not like making the Queen cry. Ever. So it's a part and parcel of the White Scarf. The peerage came along later. All of us right now in the that are masters of defense in Ansteorran came with the White Scarf of Ansteorran. It still came later. It does not get that relationship. It doesn't exist to the collar. So the collar can be Queen's Men, but it's not part of the order.
Yes.
Pete?
I keep reading over the question, why can't the Order of Defense fulfill the Queen's Man's role? Strangely enough, as happens sometimes, my granddon says something that I have to 100% agree with. And thank you, Robin. And that would be tradition. And how many things have been taken from the order, the Ansteorran Order of the White Scarf, its prestige, its, its terminal status. They built that relationship with Queens as an order and as White Scarves. And so as an order, as a member of the Order of Defense, that's not our tradition. As a White Scarf, I can still fulfill that tradition because I am a White Scarf. But as a member of the Order of Defense, that's not part of, we didn't build that tradition. It's not ours to steal.
Brenton?
I was going to say nothing because everybody had already hit on my points, but I did want to point out to Etienne that Ben was a mod in another kingdom, not here. He came here specifically and wanted to become a White Scarf of Ansteorran. So it is a little different. It is a little different in that he was made in another kingdom and then came here and sought the prestige and everything that the White Scarf here already had. But I agree with everybody on this as far as everything they said. wanted to touch on that.
The thing is, he wanted the white scarf, and that's the thing I want to point out, because when we were talking about him, there was a question: would he accept a white scarf? He's already got the peerage, and he was very much yes, I want to be one of you guys.
Yes, I remember that discussion.
So I think we've hit that question fairly thoroughly. And I've got one that I had added just at the last minute, and someone else brought to me quietly. What are you, as members of the Order of Defense, doing to not only improve yourselves within the rapier community during this horrible shutdown, but also the SCA in general? And what will you be doing when we can get back together? Sorry, it's not in your sheet notes.
Okay,
Orlando?
I'll jump in on that. So so for me personally, I continue to stay in contact with all of my students, and I continue to give my patronage as much as possible to the virtual events that are going on. I am among, I'll freely admit it, I'm among those people who finds little solace in virtual events, if any. I hate them. I really do. But I go and I give my patronage to them. I love going to events and seeing people and talking to them. And so what we've had to do is we've had to roll back to the things we can experience, things like this where we can experience that sense of community still. And so finding those ways to experience a sense of community. It's not going to be the same rush as entering a tournament or finding out who your next opponent is going to be and having that. I mean, it's not going to be that rush. I'm sorry. I hate that it's not. We can't replicate that virtually, but we can keep that sense of community going. And that's what I've been doing. And I do have a small pod. That's the word I guess we use of students that we all are very safe outside of our pod, and we get together at least weekly to do some training in the backyard and then go over other SCA soft skills and that sort of thing, and just enjoy each other's company. So, but enjoying what you can. That's what I've been doing.
Avery?
Because I'm me and I have to make the comment. I don't know what the problem is. I had a cadet who got made a white scarf after all this started. So what's the problem? Sorry, had to make the bad joke. Seriously? Like Orlando, we have several of us who are very socially distant, working together as we can. Online drills, which give you an idea of how much I want contact with people. I periodically actually do drills, and I freaking hate drills, but it's a way to see my friends. And you know, we try and make it through. Gwyneth and I have had several talks about this. What are we going to do when it's over? Because unfortunately, you know, when you get used to doing something on a regular basis for 25, 30 years, and then it goes away for a year or more, getting back into it, I know, is going to be bloody difficult. And I don't know how dedicated we're going to be. We both agree we kind of like to see our friends, but are we going to do it at the level and the amount that we were doing it before? Ask me 3 months after we're allowed to have events again.
Etienne?
So for my part, other than trying to hold down a very inactive kingdom level office, which has actually been fairly easy for the most part, and checking the weekly reopening statuses of everywhere. For me, my project at the first of the year before we went into lockdown actually was after I got elevated, I asked myself, okay, what next? What now? And for me, one of the things that I had wanted to work on and had kind of held off on when I was still pre-elevation was picking up a more period style of fighting. Doing something other than left-handed Ansteorran gunslinger. And I held off before my elevation simply because I didn't want to mess with what was working. So I've spent time largely solo trying to learn some fundamentals of actual period Italian rapier. We managed two practices down in the Lock Stargate area. And thankfully I have 2 novice fencers in my home who I can practice with when they're able to. So, and other than that, I talk to my cadet fairly regularly, make sure she's on track. Try to hold open office hours for the kingdom level office if people want to come bug me. But other than that, just trying to keep things going, trying to make sure that the kingdom, gets through this.
Robin?
Not enough. I have a bubble of very, very few people that I actually train with. This is more for my benefit for theirs, frankly, because I have had 2 shoulder surgeries this year and I'm trying to get back into it. I am trying to stay active enough on what, as near as where I can tell where Ansteorran has moved to, which is Facebook. I've started a blog on Facebook specifically to try to keep people interested in fencing. If you haven't noticed it yet, Robin Swashbuckler Reviews, doing reviews of swashbuckling books and movies. But frankly, not enough. My provost is greatly outdoing me in trying to keep fencing going and trying to help pull us together because she, Mistress Rhiannon, is running the largest, longest training event for rapier fighters in the history of the SCA. And thank you for that, Rhiannon.
You're welcome. Hey, it was totally selfish. It was so I could get some training. Did you have something to add, Etienne? Okay. I don't see anyone else. So back to my regularly scheduled. So how do y'all feel about elevating someone for cut and thrust or spear versus rapier? Pete?
I've got a pretty good opinion about that since my provost is a primarily only cut and thrust fighter. If the society says that you can be made a member of this order for rapier or cut and thrust, then I completely support people who strictly fight cut and thrust for this order. It would be kind of refreshing to have that point of view in the circle. Yes, we have several rapier fighters that are members of this order that also do cut and thrust, but none of us currently primarily only do cut and thrust. And I think we could definitely broaden our circle like that.
John, Kelly, Gwyneth, and then Orlando.
So like Peter said, it says in Kapora rapier and or cut and thrust. So really it's not up to us. Like we have to acknowledge it, right? As far as rapier spears go, I don't know. I don't know about that because they're so new. I mean, they became legal during the shutdown. So we'll just have to see. I guess if that was their primary weapon and they were just so good with it that they showed mastery, then I guess we would probably look at that. I will also say that there are a lot fewer cut and thrust tournaments, at least in Ansteorran, than there are rapier tournaments. So if someone's path is mostly cut and thrust, it will be harder just because there will be less opportunities to demonstrate your skill with that. Like, so it's not that we won't consider you. It's just that it will take longer because there's less opportunities to do that. But I do think there could be a lot of room to, if you were making those opportunities, that would probably also be that would be a huge deal, right? If you created more opportunities and then demonstrated your skill in those opportunities, I think that would, I think we would look pretty highly on that probably.
Kelly?
The short answer, well, yes. Long answer is they're going to really have to kick ass and be visible. A lot of what John said, but more so. I mean, they're going to have to be winning 9 out of 10 of the few CMT tournaments we have on a consistent basis. Problem is, there's not enough of a theater.
Gwyneth, did you have something to add?
Yeah. The argument is the smaller schools. It's not just that it's harder to demonstrate mastery, it's only finding more questions. I'm not sure what the numbers are. But let's say it's
You're almost inaudible, Gwyneth. You're almost inaudible.
it's going to be hard to evaluate their skill. Plus, does it make sense to acknowledge someone as the leader of your community when they are only interacting with a small percentage of that community? It would be like making a knight who not only fights greatsword, but only fights heavy fighters who are also fighting greatsword and refuses to fight with the others. They're deliberately limiting themselves, and I would find it difficult to come up with a good reason for doing that that would not reflect negatively on them. I had something else to say, but I forgot it.
Orlando?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Gwyneth. I think I mean there are going to be those guys. I mean there's guys there are knights, right, that are just amazing in tournament with their big shield or sword and board, and you hand them a glaive and they couldn't possibly they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. And supposedly they look for a broad spectrum, but I think I can see the guy or the gal that focuses primarily on CNT, because there's a T in CNT, right? It's edge oriented, but there is a thrust in there. But but we all know that rapier thrust oriented only is much different than edge-oriented combat. And I think that for an MOD, I would prefer to see someone who's maybe strong in one or the other, but can teach and at least hold their own in both systems. And as far as spear goes, spear is still non-standard for the SCA. I wouldn't mind seeing it go further. I'm a huge fan of pole arms, but if we're going to be an FCA based martial art, then it's a non-standard weapon system right now by society rules. So we shouldn't necessarily have to consider spear. But I mean, if somebody's good in the other things and they're really great at spear, that may push them over some edge that they haven't gotten over. Of course, they have to have peer-like qualities on top of that. So, but I have to agree. I can't imagine somebody becoming an MOD that hasn't, especially going forward, that hasn't gotten out onto the CNT field. And I can't imagine a CNT only person that's never gotten out onto the rapier field. I think they've got to show everything to me in the fencing arena or steel combat, whatever we're calling it now. I think fencing's the current favored term. That's all I got.
Anyone else? We're going to shift gears a little bit. Most of you carry flasks. What's in your flask today?
Orange vodka. That's generally in my flask when I'm my mod flask when I'm hanging out.
Okay.
Devil's cut.
Benedictine and rye.
You got a
Bristol
Breckenridge
Vale.
Porter.
A nice mix. Your students, and I'm one of them, called provost, red collars. I've seen a couple of other different variations. Is that the standard, or is it still under debate? And I see John's hand up already, followed by Avery, Kelly, and Iago.
So I think it is definitely a debate, but what someone calls their student is their choice, right? Like that's up to them. So debate means that implies there's some sort of conflict. I think we don't all agree, but I specifically call my students still cadets, even though they are going to stay my student until they are a mod. So, and I've thought about if maybe I'll change what I call them when they get a white scarf or not. I haven't decided. Like originally, I thought they'd just be a cadet until they get a mod. We might reconsider that when that happens. I'm not sure yet. I do think more mods should take students until they are mods and stop taking students as white scarves. I think that should, like, no other peerage, like if a knight doesn't take back their squire's belt when they get a centurion, right? Like, or Laurel doesn't take back the apprentice belt when they get an iris. So I think we need to stop doing that. That is, so like, I don't care what they call their student, but I think they should take students as peers, not as white scarves.
Avery?
I have a hard time using the term provost personally, because pretty much from the time I started fighting rapier, went to my first Penzic barely a year after I had gotten authorized as a rapier fighter, and we became really good friends with a bunch of the Atlanteans. So in my brain, provost is an Atlantean white scarf. And it's nothing against the other terms or anything like that. It's just that's the slot my brain has put them in. There's been the argument that a provost is a title for the London Masters of Defense. Cool. I'm not a member of the London Masters of Defense. Yeah, I know that other people have used the term provost. I know Etienne uses a different term. John uses a different term. I don't have any students at the current moment. I've jokingly told Orazio and I agreed after he got his white scarf that we would wait 1 year so we could figure out what the hell it means to be a white scarf. And then we'll talk about continuing or not. And I have threatened him that if he does take a red collar from me, his title will be planche. But, you know, it's, I also know that it's not an Ansteorran only thing. There are places, provost seems to be the most likely and most common term across the known world, but it is by far not the only one I've heard out there outside of Ansteorran included.
Kelly?
The cadet I have taken since having the white collar is a cadet. After he gets a white scarf, that Don will be my student. I don't like the term provost. It does something weird in my head. Too many overloaded terms for other things. So I don't like using it. Others can, just not for me.
Iago?
Okay.
Everything I
Um,
had to say has been covered. I'm done.
Okay. Robin?
First of all, Avery brought up the Atlantean term for the white scarf. This was discussed when that first came up as the Atlantean term for the white scarf. It was specifically brought up in their first white scarf circle in Atlanta when they were talking about doing this. And I pointed out, because I was there, you know, that's the most obvious term for the student of a peer if we ever get peers. And they said, yes, that's why we're using it. That was accepted by Atlanta the first day they used provost. Now, I never considered that there was a question. It is the English word for the student of a Master of Defense trying to become a Master of Defense, for the same reason that squire is the term for the student of a knight, and apprentice and journeyman were the only legitimate candidates for law. But no, it is not the official term. There can't be an official term. There will never be an official term because students of peers are completely unofficial. Squire is not an official term. Protege is not an official term. It's the term I'm going to use because I prefer to use English than to invent new terms. But the idea that other people have to agree with me is just completely opposed to the idea of peerage. These are my peers.
Etienne?
Modius?
I withdraw my hand.
Oh, okay. Orlando?
All right.
Orlando?
I can't raise my virtual hand, everybody, because I'm technically the host of the meeting. So I think that everybody I like the regalia because everybody seems to want a marking. We have the benefit right now in Ansteorran of having such a small order that everybody knows who everybody's student is right now because they, you know, we talk to each other and know about it. It's not always going to be the truth of the matter, but I don't have a problem with the regalia, but I do have a problem with the name for the reasons that we have. So my thing, I would ask everybody that's on this, if you become a provost or you become a student to an MOD, I should say, try to come up with a different name or something that you find interesting. Maybe something else will catch on, or maybe we'll start as Robin said, it's not an official thing. So maybe we'll start a new trend where people pick student names based on whatever their preference is, rather than just going with the unwritten rule of the society.
Padawan.
There you go. So yeah, that said, I did take a provost. I don't know. Thinking of other names, but I agree with several other of my brothers and sisters that I'm not a big fan of the name.
Brendan?
I'm with Avery on Planche myself, but what I did want to say is I agree with John. I'd like to see more, and I'm guilty, so I'm throwing myself under the bus here too. That I'd like to see more red collars out there. I'd like to see people taking intentional MOD students versus cadets. I've had my last cadet that is active was made a white scarf, and I will no longer take red scarves. I will only be taking red collars from this moment forward. So just so y'all know, and just to give you an idea, John, Keith and I talked, and I just didn't really feel like I was the right person to take him forward from that point. It's actually a good argument for why you could actually separate the two. He's actually a student under Mahdi, and which I think was a good choice. I just didn't have the what he needed to reel him in. If you can imagine that.
Yeah. Well, if I can clarify real quick, I think it's a change that needs to start happening going forward, right? If you had a relationship before the mod existed, which is in some case people have or still have, then I'm fine with that playing out how you, because you didn't agree, you agreed under different terms. So that's totally different. But I think going forward, we as an order need to do a better job of saying that these are our students as peers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I've got 3 hands up: Avery, Etienne, and Peter.
I also wanted to point out the fact that the students of people who happen to be members of the Order of Defense have many different names kind of actually goes into the tradition of the what formerly were the terminal awards for rapier in the entire SCA. We had White Scarves in several kingdoms, we had ogres, we had bladesmen, we had warders, whatever. So we're just carrying on the tradition as far as that's concerned, is the way I look at it.
Etienne?
So for my part, my student, my second, was my cadet, is still my cadet. I view the red collar and the red scarf as 2 different marks of intent. And I made Charles my cadet before I was a member of the Order of Defense. And when I was elevated, it was okay, we're going to take some time and then we're going to talk about this and you decide whether you want to, take a collar or not. And ultimately, we came to that terms. But going forward, it's going to depend on what their intent is for me. I think the red scarf is an important piece of our history, and I don't want to stop giving those out to people who want to earn the white.
Peter?
I just wanted to say that I actually have stopped making cadets stop giving out red scarves. I only take red collared students now, and that's all I ever will. I'm never going to probably never take another cadet again. I am pretty much doing what somebody else suggested, and just take students as a peer. So anyway, that's me.
So whatever you're going to call them, you're most likely, because I know I do when I'm looking for apprentices and proteges, looking for certain characteristics in your students. Is there anything special you're looking for? Iago?
I just raised my hand really quick because I have to bail. It's dinner time here, and my lovely wife is taking care of dinner. And I love you all. I miss you. It's been great hearing you get your voices again.
You are missed, my friend. Give Lucia a big hug from all of us.
Good to see you, Yago.
Yeah,
Take care.
Iago. It's good seeing you, brother.
So back to the question. Peter
Um,
and Modi.
what am I, is the question what we were looking for in why we take the provost we take? What are we looking for in this provost? Well, one biggest thing for me is they have to be able to put up with me. But they have to, like my current provost is very dedicated to cut and thrust. That's something that that dedication is really something that I look for in a student. And it happened during during this whole pandemic. So I've yet to actually put an actual physical collar on him, but he's mine anyway. No, I just look for dedication, dedication to the kingdom, to the art, and to his family, their family.
Modius?
My expectations are that to walk the path of the order of defense, and I will take a brief, John, because this question came up, and bear with me. Members of the order of defense may choose to swear fealty, but are not required to do so. Candidate must be considered equal of his or her prospective peers. The basic weapons of rapier and/or cut and thrust combat. The candidate must have applied skill and knowledge in the instruction of members in service to the kingdom to the extent and beyond that is normally expected of members of the society. To set an example of chivalrous and courtesy, conduct on and off the field. If in fealty, support and uphold the crown of his or her kingdom, or to enrich the kingdom by sharing his own knowledge and skills. So from my perspective is if you put on the collar, you are expected to walk to the end of the road, which is the order of defense, and need to have and hold these elements of corpora close as your primary marching orders. And everything else gets added into the mix.
John?
So I want someone who I think can become a mod, right? And that I can help them do that, right? Like, so it might not, so that I could be the person that I would be the right person for that. And then we have to be able to get along, right? Like that's probably, and arguably that might be the most important part. And Peter said it's like you just be able to get along. And I like having a pretty close relationship with my students, right? So like I joke that the only reason I have students is because I want someone to ride to events with. And it if you're going to spend 4 hours or more, in a car with someone, you have to be able to get along with them. So that's kind of my joking requirement is they have to be able to be willing to go to events with me, keep me company, keep me from falling asleep if I'm driving or drive either way. But yeah, no, mostly that I think they can be a mod and that we get along.
God knows how many car monologues you heard from me.
Yeah, I'm just carrying the tradition on, Kelly.
Robin, then Etienne.
It impressed me how close John's requirements are to mine, almost word for word. I've been saying this about cadets, about proteges, about apprentices, and yes, about provosts now. First, I have to believe they can get there. Second, I have to believe, I'm not setting odds. I'm not saying I know they'll get there. If I know they get there, they probably don't need me. Second, I have to believe I have what they need to get there. Thirdly, I have to be willing to be associated with what they are doing today. And that has cut off a couple of people. And fourth, Serena and I both have to enjoy their company. That's the minimum requirements. And I
Etienne?
have to say, I have been incredibly lucky in the people who wanted to be my cadets and provosts and all the rest.
Mine are similar to Robin. I would stress that I've got to either see what I can do in some way to help them. That I feel like maybe I'm, maybe not uniquely equipped, but due to circumstances, location, or whatever, that I feel like I'm a good option for that I can bring something besides just prestige and training. But, if there's some other thing that this person needs that I can try and help, focus on that. If I'm not seeing it, they're going to have to convince me that I'm the right one for them. But the other things, get along, has to be acceptable to my lady, all of those things as well.
Avery?
To put it bluntly, everything that's been said before, but then the other part is when I take an official student and how I was taken as an official student is family. If so, the scarf on my arm, the scarf on their arm, a collar on my neck, collar on their neck. As Robin said, you have to be comfortable with how that person is acting, and that goes both directions. When I put a red scarf on Orazio, the comment I made was that he is now carrying my honor, but I'm also acknowledging that I am now carrying his as well. And with the situation that I am in, that means that if you're now going to be part of the family, then you got to be able to get along with the rest of the family. Gwyneth has a veto. If I have an active cadet, they have a veto. At the current moment, Orazio doesn't get an automatic veto, but as he is still part of the family, he certainly gets a say in the matter. If I'm like, hey, I really want to take this person as a student, and Orazio tells me no frickin' way, and here's why, probably going to listen to him. And so, I always tell people who say, oh, I want to be your student or I want to be so-and-so student, please, dear God, go spend time with each other. Make sure that this is actually a relationship that you are okay with happening and not just happening for 1 or 2 years. Robin, your oldest, cadet, for who was, well, no, I'm talking about from who was, the first cadet you had who became a White Scarf. Was that Glenn or no, Jeremy?
Glenn was my first cadet. Jeremy was the first to become a White Scarf.
Okay.
By a couple months.
And Jeremy got his White Scarf
84.
36 years ago. He's still family to you, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So you better make sure that is a relationship you're comfortable being in.
Anyone else? Oh, Orlando.
Sorry, the guy who can't raise his hand. Yeah, this is who would be your student, who would be your provost, your cadet. This is probably one of those subjects that we wax most philosophical over. And I'll tell you, I agree with everything that everyone has said. Once you become my provost or my cadet, you will always have a plate and a tankard at my table. And so it makes that decision very important because we try to grow people. And when I say we, I mean Kat and I, we try to grow people in more ways than just the martial art. The martial art is a meditation on a more holistic level. But by understanding that, the most important thing is that I have to believe that I can make you a better person. And if for some reason, either it's because of philosophical disagreements or because we have an inability to build a rapport with one another, or because there is something we like or dislike about one another, if there's something that serves to block my ability to make you a better person, then I'm not going to take you on as a student, because I'm not taking on just a person that I'm teaching to use a sword. I do that pretty regularly at my youth practice. I teach plenty of teenagers and middle school kids how to kill other people. If you want to learn that, feel free to show up. If you want to learn to be a better person, then come hang around at my backyard practice and we'll see if it's going to be a good fit. But that's the most important thing. Can I improve you? Not every one of my I've had students already that have decided to leave the path. They still come to our house as if they're family every holiday. They're always welcome. Whenever they need a problem, we go, and we still treat them as family. They're just not on the same path as everybody else. It's a lifelong engagement that we're looking for.
Just to lighten it up a little bit, do you have a favorite book or film that inspires you as to do what you're doing as a member of the Order of Defense?
I'll answer. So, film The Three Musketeers, the good one, the Salkind, always. Three and Four Musketeers. Book, just because I think it never gets enough love, even though it's well regarded. A novel by Ellen Kushner called Swords Point, A Fairy Tale of Manners. It's sold in the fantasy aisle, but there's no magic in it. It's largely people sitting around drawing rooms and politicking and fighting duels. And it's lovely.
Robin?
I could not narrow it down to a single dozen movies or books. If you really want my answer, go to the Legion of Swashbucklers page, go to the notes section, and download my paper on lessons from fencing movies, or fighting for the audience as well as the win, because that's my 16-page answer.
Anyone else? Avery?
As Etienne said, the Salkind Three and Four Musketeers are brilliant, but I think it's amazing what we can do and what we've discovered over the years. The fact that, when Robin and Tyvar and Gallowglass started, at Rice before any of this was anything else, they had foils and epées and they ran around and did the best they could. And now, because of the information explosion, if you decide you want to go be exactly as close to Capoferro or Gigante or Marazzo or whatever, you can, because that information, which was not available back then, is absolutely available now. And, what would Capoferro do is a great question to ask. But the fact is, we owe as much to Capoferro and all of them as we do to Errol Flynn. And I think sometimes we forget the fact that, yes, it's brilliant that we can be as accurate and as whatever as we can, and that's fabulous. But the fact is, none of us really started this at the beginning because we wanted to emulate a treatise from 1536. We did it because they let us play with swords. And swords are cool. And so therefore, I'll say the Salkind Three Musketeers or the Duelists or any of those. But I'm also going to throw in Zorro the Gay Blade.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to remember this is supposed to be fun, goddammit. And sometimes I think we forget that. So, and the Discworld books by Terry Pratchett, all of the Guards books, Sam Vimes is who we should all try and be. So, anyways.
From my perspective, the quintessential movie that you have to embrace, that is the society that is Rapier, is A Knight's Tale.
It has its merits. Orlando?
Okay, go watch Princess Bride, followed by The Three Musketeers, followed by Ice Pirates, followed by The Goonies, and then read that crazy dialogue at the end of Agrippa's Manual. And now in the SCA Rapier community.
My head's going to explode. Anyone else? Okay. Gabriel threw in a question on the side early on, and we had sort of steered away from it. There, evidently, some of the crowns are considering granting patents that are blank, no order attached to them. How do y'all feel about that?
Blank patents have been ruled out by Corpora, by the board.
Okay.
I don't think a board decision to overturn their decision to prohibit blank patents. specifically.
Okay. Kelly?
Circles that have a reason for being. To give the crown advice. Patents take that out. Naked patents mean no circles, mean no advice, means whatever the hell the crown feels like doing. I'm not certain that would necessarily be good for the SCA.
Orlando?
Yeah, okay, yep, I have to agree. And I have to say that I think that's the same way with any naked grant or naked, you know, the award of arms is maybe the only one that I feel like, but I think everything else, you have to have a reason for being and a reason for doing the thing. I don't think, yeah, what is your reason? That's it. I don't see it. I really don't.
Let's see. What kind of impact do you think the Order of Defense has on this kingdom versus some of the other kingdoms? John?
So a lot of people said when before the mod existed, that Ansteorran didn't need it. That the White Scarf was basically a peerage and that it would ruin everything. I don't agree with that now. I'm not sure exactly what I thought at the time. I thought it would certainly be disruptive. But I think that, yes, it was disruptive. Yes, it did make things difficult. But the White Scarves were kind of, we were peers, they were thought of as peers in a way when it was convenient and not when it wasn't, right? And so if the rapier community wanted to be taken seriously, even in Ansteorran, even if we say that we were the most respected rapier community in the known world, there was still an asterisk, right? And now there's not. I mean, there maybe still is, arguably, but we're going in the right direction with this, and it was needed to be taken as seriously as the rest. Like, if we want, we are taken more seriously now because of it. So it was needed in this kingdom, and I'm sure some of these other mods are going to probably disagree with me here in a second, but I think I felt like I've been treated differently as a peer than before I was a peer. And I see the order being treated by other peers differently. So I think it's been a good change. And yes, there's been change always is hard, but it's a change that we're still working through. And I think it's been overall a good change that was needed.
Well said.
Robin?
Okay. This is going to be uncomfortable to hear. It has been uncomfortable to live through. It is merely true. The biggest change it's made to Ansteorran is that for decades, we've had fencers throughout the known world looking at our white scarves and saying, oh, I wish I could have that, but I can't. Fencers throughout the known world are no longer weeping because they can't have what we have. They are working to have what our fencing peers have. We have had a huge advantage over fencers throughout the known world because we had the first ever fencing order, because we made the white scarf a symbol for fencing excellence over the course of the known world, because 12 other kingdoms copied us with the white scarf. And all of this felt so good. And on May 1st, 2015, our wonderful advantage disappeared. We started at exactly the same time everyone else did. We've had peers for 5 years, but everyone else has had peers for 5 years too. We are now competing fairly. We're not taking 45-inch blades against the other guy's 30-inch blades anymore. We're competing on a completely even level. Now, first of all, we need to accept that means we succeeded. That means we built something nobody else built, and we can feel good about that. But it also means we're on the same level as everyone else, and I don't like it. You don't like it. But it's fair, and it's true, and it's honest, and that is good for the SCA as a whole, and it's good for Ansteorran to not have an unfair advantage. It is not comfortable for Ansteorran to no longer have an unfair advantage, but it is good for us. Thank you.
I have Orlando, Etienne, and Gwyneth.
So yeah, I agree with Robin and John as well. I also would point out that we've been able to maintain the prestige of the White Scarf, which I think is important, an important recognition of our history. But we've also been able to have something that none of the other major polling orders in our kingdom have had, and that's the chance to move forward at this society level. For better or worse, in many ways, the rapier community was starting to stagnate. And I think I would, you know, I'm excited to get this pandemic out of the way, because I really think that we need to continue to push forward with getting more youthful, energetic, new ideas into the rapier community, and really get this back on track. And I was not a big fan of the MOD. I'll be honest with you. I really imagined the White Scarf would become the order, but it was also an opportunity that other communities didn't have. And I think by maintaining the prestige of the White Scarf, we've been able to do this. And I think it's unfortunate that we're at a moment where I think we were at a decisive moment to strike on this opportunity when the pandemic hit, and that's thrown a real wrench in a lot of our plans. But I think moving forward, we're really going to see some radical changes for the good, for the better. Not that there's anything that needs to be improved on, but moving forward, really progressive, radical changes in the rapier community that will continue the rapier community in the SCA for a long time.
Going back to the question, which was impact on the kingdom, something I've seen in a very personal way is while it was difficult, it caused many of us who were senior White Scarves to say, okay, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to work with this? And if we want to be part of it, what are we going to do? And speaking very personally of the impact of the MOD, it made me get off my butt and earn it. There was certainly a beginning, in the beginning, there were questions of, okay, what are they going to do with this? What does it mean? And it was very clear early on that this was not going to be a lifetime achievement award. This was going to be an active order of people who were doing the job. And at least for me, that meant a very conscious, decision and effort, because honestly, when the OD was created, I was very inactive. I don't think there's anyone with a collar on who would say that I would have been on the radar in 2005. And that's fair. So from a personal standpoint, it got me off my butt. It made me do the work. And I think it's made other people do the work. and it's made the community better for it.
Gwyneth?
I don't agree with what Robin said about the White Star taking advantage and now we have that. The fact that I have this award doesn't make me a better fighter. And the fact that Ansteorran has a period doesn't mean that we have better fencers. And the fact that the two different kingdoms have the same peerage doesn't mean that their fencers are on equal footing either. They had the same fences they did before, we had the same fences we did before. And whether there's an award for it or not doesn't change who we are or what we can do.
Got one more question for you, and then we'll see where we go from there. We have 2 grant level awards for rapier combat now.
We don't.
Blade of Merit and the White Scarf. Well, the White Scarf is no longer a grant level. I recognize that, but it was. After COVID-19, do we still need both? Do they still hold a place in this kingdom? And let me say first off, this isn't my question. I know how I feel. And I see Modius' hand up right off the bat.
My
And then
question is broader. What can we do to protect and defend the SCA and defend the rapier community from the loss of people we will have when COVID leaks back in next year's December time? It'll be next December before we're back on the field, probably at a minimum. And I think that we need to ask ourselves as mods, what is our duty and what can we do to keep the SCA alive and rapier alive in this kingdom?
John?
Well, first of all, I don't disagree with Modi, so that is a more important question, or a more important goal to have, I guess. But to answer the question that was asked, which is, do we need both? Well, I don't think we need both, and I never thought we needed both, because when they pulled everyone at the time when they created the Blade of Merit, and I did not like it. I thought Robin proposed that the White Scarf would be the heart of the rape community and the mods be the head. And I thought that was would have been a much better way to have had it. The White Scarves would have needed to have some humility to take a step back and realize that things had changed and have a different perspective on it. But I thought we could have gotten there. I think that a current system is awkward and unwieldy. And I think that by having a system that is different from the other paths to peerage, we hurt our own community. If we try to be different and special, if we continue to do that, then we're setting ourselves apart. And I think that I think that hurts the way we're treated by the rest of the kingdom.
Peter?
I've obviously said in the past that I believe that the order of the White Scarf has been changed quite a bit, and that it should end up being closed. I believe the Blade of Merit should become the new polling order. I believe it's what's best for the future of the rape community of this kingdom, and I've thought about it for a long time, and that's my opinion.
Anyone else? Orlando?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak great heresy, and I understand where John is coming from, and Peter as well, because everyone wants to see this final, very specific, hierarchy path leading to a thing, right? And we want it to be as non-confusing and as fair as it possibly can. The reality is we're thrown where we are. We're going to have to evolve what we have. The mistake is to just convert everything over at once to the new system. And the other mistake is to let it just go on forever without any resolution either. Correct? I mean, there's a problem on both sides. We don't want to continue this system where we have, should I become a white scarf or a blade of merit or both before I can become a thing? And they won't consider me for white scarf unless I have blade of merit already. There's all of these problems that we have going forward. And everybody has a resolution for it. The reality is that it may evolve in a way that none of us see. We may see it evolve in a way that no one understands. And I do think that the next real step to that is going to be for us to, as an order, and this is me speaking, not the order speaking, but for us as an order to start considering paths to MOD that don't include the white scarf, and also considering paths from white scarf to MOD that are less complicated than they currently are. But another thing that you have to consider is that the white scarf, as this great Ansteorran tradition of the Queen's Man, may evolve in the future to where all current white scarves are eventually MODs. And to become a white scarf, you would almost be expected to be an MOD already. There may even be evolved. These are concepts to think about, though, is on an evolutionary path, years in the future, or to become a white scarf that the charter changes in such a way as it has recently, where you don't necessarily need to have been a rapier fighter to become a Queen's Man for the white scarf. To where the white scarf could be selected for people who aren't necessarily rapier fighters. These are evolutionary paths that we have to consider. So while there are people that I get that we want to organize things in such a way that it makes for a clear path for everybody, we also have to understand that the clear path isn't always this hierarchical one stepping stone to the next stepping stone path. The white scarf could exist as the Queen's Man, outside of just the rapier community in some future where it evolves in Ansteorran. It doesn't have to be closed in order to fix this problem. That's how I see it, though.
Etienne and then Robin.
So I'm going to scream heresy at Orlando, but that's okay. I want to point out that as someone who argued vehemently for the place where we are now, that I never thought it was the best solution. If anything, I think it was kind of the agreed upon least worst at the time. I also believe that it's going to evolve and that we needed some sort of solution in place in order to let things evolve, because things were becoming difficult, is a good way to put it. So yeah, I fully expect things will change. I think it's possible that the white scarf, I hope it will not diminish and go into the West, but I believe it's always going to be part of our traditions. I think Ansteorran is a weird case because of our traditions and because of the way things, evolved here. I do think the Blade of Merit has a place and a place beyond just serving to be the grant award that someone has so that their white scarf, so as a white scarf, they're equal to the other white scarves. But I also think that that's not necessarily my place to dictate any more than it's my place to say what the centurions should be, since I'm not a centurion.
Robin?
The white scarf is a polled order. They are not all here. While I am a white scarf and have the right to an opinion, I will not give it in a forum where other white scarves cannot. The Blade of Merit is not a polled order. The Crown will decide what to do with it the way they want to. The Blades of Merit can make recommendations just like anyone else can, but they're not a polled order. So I'm ignoring that question and going to the one Modius asked, which I think is crucial and which I think we do need to think about. COVID-19, when it's over, how are we going to bring people back? And the horrible answer is we're not. A lot of people, we're going to lose. We're simply going to lose simply because we've all seen it so many times. Someone has to drop out for 6 or 7 months, never comes back. Well, that's what happened to all of us. Some of us will come back, some of us will not. We will have a smaller group. We need to commit ourselves to making this so exciting, and not just making it exciting, because we're talking about people who aren't going to events. We need to make fencing, rapier combat, so exciting, and so clearly exciting on Facebook and other social media, that people decide they want to come back, and people decide they want to get back in the shape they were in a year ago, but they haven't fenced at all, because Etienne told us how difficult it was to come back. We have to make that worth it to all the fencers. That is our most crucial job in the next year, is to make coming back to fencing exciting enough to overcome a year's worth of apathy and closed off and not doing it.
2 years, 2 years.
That's what I want us looking forward to in the future.
And Modi's had messaged that he had a question. So
That was it. I just want to make sure we address the elephant in the room. Because it's going to be till August till we are back on the rapier field, probably in mass, where estimates are that we'll lose half of the audience in the SCA. So the way to get people or get the pretty people like John Miguel out to recruit for us, and hide the old people like myself in the corner. But we need to make a press and make it exciting and bring people back and give them reasons to come back, or we won't have something to return to.
Well, my novice, Catherine, is ready to kick John Drake's rear end all over the field.
I approve this message.
I'll see you.
So do I.
I'll take
Oh.
bets.
I'll saw the gauntlet throw on that one.
Right, Catherine?
There's silence.
When did I say that?
You said that at video night just the other night. You said I could kick his butt. It's the worst.
No, I did not.
I thought you're pretty sure you said that's like the worst gather and lunge I've ever seen in my life.
John does have an iffy gather.
I welcome the challenge.
And Catherine, just to let you know, and I will feel free to speak for myself on this, and since John and I have specifically had this conversation before, I will speak for him, and I have had variations of this conversation with most of the rest of the people here. If you want to know how to beat us, ask us. We will tell you. And most of us will help you get to the point where you can too. Because yeah, it's really fun to be really, really good, but it's not as much fun to be really good when everyone else sucks. It's better to be really good when you're just barely better than the other people. And so we want to make it so all of you fight much better. So next time we're able to see each other and you want to know how to beat John, ask him. I know damn well he'll teach you.
or Avery or Orlando or Robin or me. We'll all tell you how to beat each one of us.
I approve this message.
Some of us might be right.
It's
Thank
just
you all for your interest. I am incredibly pleased with the number of people who wanted to hear what we had to say. I am incredibly pleased with my brothers and sisters who wanted to be part of making this statement. I cannot find a way to say how my heart is filled with listening to my brothers and sisters and listening to the questions from everyone else. Thank you all.
I want to thank all of y'all for participating on the panel, and Orlando for letting me moderate. Because
Thank you, Rhiannon. You've done a great job moderating.
it's been lots of fun,
A great moderator.
and it has now been 2 hours of listening to y'all babble.
It's been great to hear everybody babble.
So most likely, most of us need to take a break. And I'll thank you for recording, Orlando, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, everybody, thank you all. I will post the recording to the virtual Rapier Academy, which has gone on for an unbelievable amount of time, thanks to Mistress Rhiannon's hard work. And we will, and I really appreciate everybody getting involved in this. Also wanted to pass on Master Miles Ridley was supposed to be here tonight. He had to go to his father's birthday party, which came up at the last minute, even though his birthday was like 2 days ago. And so he wanted me to pass on his regrets for not being able to make it. I know he's missed by everybody. So so with that, thank you everybody for all the insightful questions that were sent in. And thank you to the panel for all of the insightful answers. And we'll talk to everybody online until we can get together in person again. Take care, everybody.
Good to see so many of y'all. Take care.
See y'all later.
Off the rapier. Bye-bye.
Everyone be safe.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, please, for the next 6 months.